Okay, let's dive deep. We're looking at the history of an American institution today, Smith& Wesson. But their story is much more than just firearms, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's really a lens into American industrial growth,
Mm.
how wartime needs push innovation and, the evolving ideas around civilian self-defense over time.
Exactly.
And our mission in this deep dive, pulling from the sources we have, especially that article, Smith& Wesson, An American Legacy of Firearms Innovation, is to really cut through the dense information.
Right.
We want to extract those vital nuggets of knowledge and insight to give you a clear understanding of how this company profoundly shaped the world of modern handguns.
Precisely. This deep dive is designed specifically for you, listening in, to bring the most compelling and relevant points right to the surface. So let's start at the very beginning. The founders, their initial efforts.
Okay. It all starts back in the early 1850s. You've got Horace Smith and Daniel Baird Wesson. Both were skilled arms designers operating in New England. Smith had experience from places like the Springfield Armory, solid background. Wesson was known for his sharp mechanical mind. He'd learned the trade from his brother.
And their shared ambition, it was pretty revolutionary for its time, wasn't it? They wanted to create a reliable firearm using self-contained metallic cartridges.
That was the goal. They wanted to move past that whole slow, messy process of loading powder and ball separately. A huge leap.
So this shared goal led them to partner up.
Yes. In 1854, they formed the Volcanic Repeating Arms Company, and they developed this lever-action handgun that used something they called a rocket ball.
A rocket ball. Hey, what exactly was that? Sounds interesting.
Yeah. Think of it as a really early self-contained projectile. It was basically a bullet with the propellant charge packed right into its base, all in one unit.
Ah,
No separate metal cartridge case like we think of today.
got it. Truly self-contained then.
Exactly. It was innovative, definitely. But the Volcanic Company, it struggled financially, didn't quite take off. It was eventually sold. But here's a fascinating twist, that struggling company. It actually became the foundation for what would later become the famous Winchester Repeating Arms Company.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So a false start for Smith & Wesson themselves, but they didn't give up.
Not at all. They regrouped in 1856, laser-focused this time on designing a revolver specifically for metallic cartridges. And this is where they made an absolutely crucial strategic move.
Okay, what was that?
They secured exclusive rights to the Rollin White patent. Now, this was a genuine game changer.
Why was that so important? The Rollin White patent.
Well, before this patent, most revolver cylinders couldn't be bored straight through. People thought it would lead to gas leaks, dangerous malfunctions,
Right, you had to load from the front or use these other less effective systems.
Precisely. The White patent allowed them to bore the cylinder all the way through, which meant you could load the new metallic cartridges from the rear of the cylinder. This was just essential for developing modern, practical cartridge revolvers. It gave them a fundamental technological advantage. Huge.
And that patent quickly paved the way for a truly breakthrough product, didn't it? Like almost immediately.
Yes, in 1857, they launched the Model 1.
The Model.
And the Model 1 was incredibly significant. It was this compact 7-shot revolver chambered in .22 rimfire.
Tiny thing, really.
Yeah, but it was the first commercially successful revolver designed specifically for those metallic cartridges. It was practical, it was reliable, easy to conceal.
Which made it popular, I imagine.
Hugely popular, especially during the Civil War. Union officers, civilians, they loved it.
And they also got their main factory set up in Springfield, Massachusetts around then, operational by 1859.
That's right. And this is where we see a key insight into their early business success. They were early adopters of vertical integration.
Meaning they made everything themselves.
Pretty much. Unlike a lot of manufacturers back then who relied on outsourcing parts or more sort of hand-fitting methods, Smith & Wesson started producing nearly every part of their firearms in-house.
What did that give them?
Incredible quality control, consistency, efficiency. It was a massive competitive edge at the time, really set them apart.
Okay, so after the Civil War, things changed again, right? People wanted more power.
Definitely. They built on the success of the Model 1, developing the Model 2 in .32 rimfire, which was a bit bigger, and then they introduced the truly groundbreaking Model 3.
Ah, the Model 3, that one's famous. Chambered in the much more powerful .44 S&W centerfire.
Exactly. And the Model 3 wasn't just more powerful. It represented a major technical leap forward. It had that break-top design.
Explain that to the break-top.
You could literally break the frame open on a hinge. Doing that simultaneously ejected all the spent cartridges from the cylinder.
Oh, wow. Fast reloading.
Super fast for the time. And being chambered in centerfire, not rimfire, made it much stronger, more reliable, really suitable for military use.
And this is the model that really put them on the global map, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Big contracts.
Yep.
The U.S. cavalry adopted versions. The Russian Imperial Army bought a huge number.
So by the end of the 19th century.
By then, Smith & Wesson had firmly established this reputation for, exceptional engineering precision, really durable firearms. They were the respected leader in the revolver market. Military, law enforcement, civilians, everyone trusted them.
Okay, let's jump forward a few decades. We move into what people often call the Magnum era, right? Roughly the 1930s through the 70s.
Yeah, and this period was really shaped by the changing landscape of law enforcement challenges. The Prohibition era. Gangsters.
Right, criminals who were starting to use cars for getaways, even sort of rudimentary body armor sometimes. Police needed handguns with significantly more stopping power.
Exactly. The old .38 specials weren't always cutting it against a car door, for instance.
And here's a fascinating part of the story, I think. S&W didn't just design a new gun. They were actually instrumental in developing the ammunition itself.
Precisely. They collaborated. In 1935, working with experts like Philip Sharp and Elmer Keith, they introduced the powerful .357 Magnum cartridge.
And the revolver to fire it.
That was the Model 27, initially called just the .357 Magnum registered model. It was a sensation, built on their strong end frame.
Became a police staple pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. It quickly became the sidearm of choice for many law enforcement agencies. The FBI used them. The term Magnum just became synonymous with high-performance revolvers, largely thanks to S&W.
And they didn't stop there. They pushed the boundaries again, 2 decades later?
Yep, 1955, they introduced the legendary .44 Magnum along with the Model 29 revolver.
Even more powerful. Developed with input from Elmer Keith again, right?
Yeah.
He was a big proponent of powerful handgun rounds.
He certainly was. He really pushed for that cartridge.
Now, initially, the .44 Magnum and the Model 29, they were seen as more of a niche product for hunters, maybe, or handgun enthusiasts.
That's fair to say. It was a lot of recoil, a big, heavy gun. Not exactly standard police issue at first, but then, pop culture stepped in.
Ah, yes. You can't talk about the Model 29 without mentioning
Dirty Harry, 1971 film. Clint Eastwood, the most powerful handgun in the world.
And that changed everything for the Model 29.
Oh, absolutely. The cultural impact cannot be overstated. Demand for the .44 Magnum Model 29 just exploded overnight. People who'd never considered one suddenly wanted one. Production couldn't keep up for years.
Incredible. So that Magnum era really solidified their reputation for power, for performance, made them the go-to for American law enforcement for a long, long time.
It certainly did. For decades, the S&W revolver, whether a .38 or a .357, was kind of the iconic American police sidearm.
But the market, it's always evolving, isn't it? The 1980s and 90s brought some pretty significant new competition, new challenges.
Absolutely. This is when you see the rise of European semi-automatic pistols really starting to gain traction in the U.S.
Particularly Glock, right?
Glock was huge. Polymer frames, high-capacity magazines, that striker-fired mechanism. It was a different approach. And they started challenging S&W's traditional dominance, especially in that crucial law enforcement market.
So S&W's revolvers were still respected, but their market share started to slip.
Definitely. Departments started looking very seriously at these new semi-autos. Higher capacity was a big factor.
Now, Smith & Wesson did explore semi-automatics during this time, didn't they? It wasn't like they ignored it completely.
No, not at all. You see models like the Model 39 early on, then the later third-generation autos like the 469, the 645, the 4006. They were definitely trying to compete in that space. Metal frames, mostly double-action, single-action.
Right, they were putting pistols out there.
Yeah.
But none of those models seemed to capture the market quite like their revolvers had, or like Glock was doing.
Yeah, they didn't achieve that same level of dominance. They were good guns, many served well, but they didn't stop the tide shifting towards polymer striker-fired designs for many users.
And this period, the late 90s especially, also saw them navigate a really difficult and controversial time for the company itself.
It did. This relates to the political climate around firearms at the time. During the late 1990s, under pressure, the company agreed to a safety and design standards accord with the Clinton administration.
What was the impact of that decision?
Well, the source material indicates this agreement drew significant backlash, both from consumers, gun owners, and from other manufacturers within the firearms industry.
So a negative reaction.
Yes. It led to a notable boycott by consumers. calls to avoid their products, and the company was ultimately sold during this period. It was certainly a very challenging chapter in their history. We're just reporting what the sources state here, of course.
Understood. But the story doesn't end there in the late 90s doldrums. We see a clear path towards recovery and really reinvention starting in the early 2000s.
Definitely. New ownership, new direction. It was a deliberate effort to modernize and regain market position.
And in 2003, they made a very bold statement, almost like announcing they were still Smith & Wesson, with the Model 500.
Yes, the .500 S&W Magnum. It's described in the source as the most powerful production handgun ever made.
So a clear signal that while they were facing new competition, they weren't abandoning their roots in, powerful revolvers, still flexing those engineering muscles.
Exactly. But the truly pivotal moment in their modern era, the thing that really changed their trajectory again, came in 2005.
What happened then?
The introduction of the M&P series.
Military and police.
These were a completely new line. Modern, polymer-framed, mostly striker-fired pistols, designed explicitly to go head-to-head with the market leaders' Glock, Sig Sauer.
So embracing the very technology that had challenged them.
Precisely. And they were successful. The M&P line was very well received. It was rapidly adopted by law enforcement agencies, gained immense popularity with civilian shooters for defense and sport.
Marked a significant return to form, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It combined modern features people wanted: ergonomics, reliability, modularity with the S&W name. It really put them back in the game in a big way.
So if we look at where they are today,
Mm-hmm.
based on the sources,
Mm-hmm.
what's the picture?
They've really reestablished themselves as a major player. They've retaken leadership positions in certain law enforcement markets. They've significantly diversified their product lines. It's not just handguns anymore. They have rifles, suppressors, other gear. Still innovating, too.
Yeah, they continue to innovate, not just with modern polymer pistols like the M&P Shield, which one source comment mentioned as a top seller for concealed carry.
Right, very popular.
But they also continue to produce and refine their classic revolver designs. They haven't abandoned that heritage. It's a much broader portfolio now.
It's quite a remarkable trajectory when you trace it all the way from the beginning, isn't it?
It really is.
From those initial experiments with the rocket ball, securing that absolutely critical Rollin-White patent.
Yeah.
Then the industrial innovation, the Model 1, the vertical integration.
Then the sheer power unleashed in the Magnum era.
Right. Navigating the intense competition from semi-autos, dealing with that controversial Accord, and ultimately engineering a successful reinvention with the M&P series.
It's truly a case study in American industry. It shows how a company can adapt, innovate, sometimes stumble, but ultimately endure through massive technological shifts, changing market demands, and some really challenging periods. Absolutely. Resilience is definitely a theme.
Yeah.
And it leaves us with a final thought, something for you to consider as you reflect on this history.
Okay.
Looking at Smith & Wesson's continuous evolution, from creating the very first commercially successful metallic cartridge revolver back in 1857 with the Model 1, all the way to developing today's hugely popular concealed carry handguns like that M&P Shield we mentioned. What is this incredible, 150-plus year journey tell us about the ever-changing needs, the technologies, and maybe even the philosophies shaping personal defense in America across all that time?